Pinkerton's Ghosts is a horror anthology podcast by Superversive Radio, with no affiliation with any detective agency, person, real or imagined, or the dark forces of Outre Terre. It is not intended for children.
Jack Morrow here, reporting on my and Sean Russo's trip to New Orleans on the trail of John LeMartin. John was not a loner, as Paranormal Pinkertons go. He worked with my mother several times over her career, and even made some passes at her. My mother, being a righteous woman, rebuffed him. It grossed me out. Besides my mother, he worked with just about everyone in a 2-state deep circumference. Even some of the vigilante groups from Mexico. I don't know how much hopped up for the border from Mexico, but it was enough to be noted in his files. John kept those to himself, mostly. I don't know why old Control put up with that, but Control has sent me and Sean to crack his office. The office manager had the Paranormal Pinkerton number, which he thought was a private investigation combine or something, and often called about John. The landlord was worried about him. Nothing was known about his whereabouts after the September purge. John was a bit of a wheeler and dealer, so I could see him making a deal, but his record as a Paranormal Pinkerton was excellent, both to my and Sean's surprise. He ran around in New Orleans, after all. There were unholy nights when a cold wind came up from the south through the Mississippi, and it set all good men to shivers. When Mardi Gras is celebrated, strange apparitions appear, celebrating and tooting on trumpets. It's a spirit of carnival, driving the debauched celebrants to terrible decisions, all the pleasure of an orgy-porgy, and all the consequences, too. Perhaps one of the better Protestant choices was to avoid that particular celebration. Sean is giving me a look. But there is a truth to that. Even though I face monsters, Missouri, from Branson and radiating out, is notorious for both its quietude and the viciousness of those monsters who are there. The things that come out are powerful. Folklore legends that survived the settlers or are from the outside, barring places made unholy. There is no need to make deals with the fair folk or earth spirits. They fled the plain churches, the Stoic faith, and the well-read Bible. I don't think the settlers noticed. New Orleans is one of those crossroads of the world, and it had the stink of the world on it. The carnival spirit, sure, but more. Worse, rot. I had been there briefly during the Whitecroft Green Sun case. The landlord led us into John's office. It was untouched since I had looked into the windows last year, though the restaurant was gone. Mr. Henderson remembered me. That felt good. We brought back the food to the office. Sean, what do you think?
I didn't think Mr. Henderson was real. Don't get any barbecue sauce on those papers.
I'm a professional, Sean. We went over the case files. Most were the usual. Ghost hauntings, strange sounds at the graveyards, reports of a ghoul, nothing really crazy.
You think we should call in Jim over that, Jack?
No, it's over a year old and I can't find any evidence of continued activity. Also, no more than 2 of us in any one location. Control's rules. Back on track. We went over the last 3 cases. We don't talk about this, but Paranormal Pinkerton cases are collated and organized according to a manual by old Alan Pinkerton. It's about completion dates, not events. Most of my important cases are over in a night, but sometimes the old man knew things could get messy. Even though John LeMartin worked 3 cases at once, none of them had any conclusions. One of them had clues out to the East Coast, the other the West. One was stationed here, and it would do for a start. This one was near and dear to my heart. He was investigating a moving voodoo statue. You can imagine my glee. Sean and I loaded up as much as we could without looking suspicious. This was a populated part of New Orleans, on the outskirts in the famous French Quarter. Gentrification had hit the city like a brick, but it had also stopped cold during the events of last year, and still hadn't revived to its former momentum. Enough police were running around that it would look bad for two suspicious men walking around in trench coats and fedoras, carrying heavy arms. I loaded up a round I had Mercy gin me up. It's basically a chisel slug. I had found something like the voodoo statue I fought before we found control, and I blew it to splinters. I also had some, perhaps too much, explosive. A pity I wouldn't be able to use any of it. The trail was cold, very cold, by the time we got near to the military base. It was cold when John LeMartin was investigating it, which was strange. John was very French, but he was also professional. He didn't bother with cold trails or long shots. Both Sean and I agreed that there must have been something that John could see, and probably counted obvious, but we couldn't see for ourselves. Speaking of the cold trails, the sewers were freezing under the base. The smell caused Sean to retch, even behind his gas mask. It was not the awful, but the death that caused my eyes to water. I figured New Orleans sewers would be a smell I'd never forget, but I didn't understand that until that moment. The cold made it worse. Some sort of machine deep at the center of the base was pumping chilled air in the tunnels. Sean and I got to work. This part of the sewer system was old, rounded with brick, like the St. Louis tunnels. We found the Mississippi River and turned back into the city. For several hours we searched. Eventually the smell became nothing but a minor annoyance. We could hear cars above our heads rumbling. Someone, impossible to track with the echoes, was playing a trumpet. I was still feeling a bit of the thing from the farmhouse. I had an urge to say something clever to Sean. I shook my head until it went away. I hadn't found myself doing anything else weird. Don't say it, Sean.
I wasn't going to say anything.
Well, weirder. I know it's a side effect of being a part of this business, losing small slivers of yourself. Eventually it becomes an unpayable butcher's bill. I wonder if that's what's happened to Grigory Horvath. Things happened. Maybe he lost one of his boys, and then he had a price. His soul wasn't as tough as it was when I was a kid. The ticket was on the table, and he took it. We got a breakthrough when we found markings on the sewer walls. A scraped arrow had been carved into them. We followed it deeper in, towards the land. Sean and I found a patch where the arrows pointed in from all directions. We drew our weapons, counted to 3, and then burst in. We found ourselves in a cave system. I knew this kind well. They're naturally occurring, usually from the actions of the Mississippi as it rolled in its paths, and normally empty. While creatures may inhabit cave systems like these, humans avoid them. I could not tell you why, but my family had never bothered to inhabit a system like these either. It's winter while we're going over this, but it was Mardi Gras in this cave. Faded lights were bouncing off the ceiling, barely holding on to their filaments. Rotted antique dressers were festooned with streamers of moth-eaten silk and paper. Deflated balloons draped over everything. Those tables, still standing, had glassware and silverware scattered over their surfaces. Some of the pieces had writing, but age had done its work, and we could read nothing. The whole place smelled of rotten wood, an improvement.
Speakeasy?
Sean nudged over some cracked glasses. Probably. I looked at some of the glasses. I smelled rust, not evaporated booze. There were no skeletons in the room. Normally that would mean that there were skeletons somewhere else, or in the next room, or in some sort of closet. There was nothing. I would have thought that they were piled somewhere, scraping their nails away on an unforgiving door. Nothing. It was a party, used, then abandoned by its partygoers. There were even ancient LPs on a 1930s recorder, complete with amplifying horn. Bottles were stacked neatly across a back wall with no label. Speakeasy. I tapped on a plaque reading, "The New Orleans Queen."
But why did they abandon it? Where is the door? I don't think those guys would be willing to climb through a sewer every night.
Maybe it was just over, a one and done.
The atmosphere isn't right for it. Mafioso were businessmen. They wouldn't just leave all this glass and silver all over the place. This was big money.
Sean sounded the walls. I brushed off some dust from the lead table. The patterns hinted at some casino game. There were no dice or chips. Sean tapped on a piece of wood.
I think I found another exit. Help me out.
Between the two of us, we kicked through some wood paneling. Someone had put up metal shelving, and that fell over soon. The carnival spirit was gone. Instead, the rows of empty shelves and boxes stretched out several 100 feet to an island of light. We could have taken the exit door 20 feet to our right. Instead, we walked towards the light. Sean and I had each other's backs. I was quite impressed with him. He moved quietly, his gun at the ready, and the glint in his eye just right. We were ready. "Sean, try to get your ring on this thing. It might knock it out, otherwise we blow it to high heaven." The statue squatted in a quasi-lotus position. It considered its pot, which it cradled in its lap. You'd mistake it for a Buddha if it wasn't for its demeanor. It was the shape of a man, but just the shape. It was crusted with blood and worse, smelling like death. It had no carved eyes, but carved shoes and a formless shift it wore over its body. It was a man-thing with no soul, a mockery of something sacred. It felt like it was waiting for something. I couldn't tell what for. The tiny statues had an active malice, but their Mecca, Big Brother, just wanted to wait. Maybe it was waiting to be inhabited. The air around the body rotated like a heat mirage, and a rainbow combined. Rainbows are circular. This miasma rolled off its back like a mandala, or not a mandala, like a table with sacrifices arranged in unholy mathematical compositions. The air shimmered in different ways at strange occult points. I threw a screw at it. The screw passed through the air and fell to the ground. It was like a bubble had popped. The invisible fog lapped at my toes. The statue did not move. I pulled out some plastique. Can't go wrong with that. I remembered what this thing did to me. Its pot absorbed the atmosphere like a black hole. Then it released all the energy like a bomb. It had put me the closest to death I had ever experienced. The blast blinded me for a month. I couldn't move. My very tendons were loose within my flesh. If Grigori hadn't needed me alive. I was going to enjoy this. The plastique was soon molded onto its body. I had brought a pound or two of it. Just picking up whatever I thought proper. Can't go underarmed on a vengeance trip. Sean had his ring finger on the stone.
I don't see anything in it. I thought you said it was piloted.
It needs a tiny voodoo statue to make it go.
How?
It just absorbs it. Don't ask dumb questions. I was just about done when I felt a needle hit my neck. Something burned like acid under my skin. 1,000 wasps had dive bombed 1 square millimeter on my neck. I collapsed like a sack of bricks. Sean put the pieces together for me. Madame Laveau had stopped us. Sean just submitted.
She wasn't going to kill us, Jack.
It's not about that. It's about killing the damn thing.
Not everything is about killing, Jack. This thing is out of our weight class. If it can manhandle you, I shouldn't be anywhere near it.
It just got the jump on me, that's all.
Well, that's twice. The fact that Madame Laveau let us leave with our lives is enough. I've already contacted Days about it.
Madame Laveau had poisoned me. She delivered the antitoxin while her son held Sean at gunpoint. He was allowed to leave with me. Baron drove us all the way to Mr. Henderson. That boy is going to have a powerful hunger for vengeance, or hunt, or meat. Best let him feast, she had said, as Sean and Mr. Henderson carried me over to a bench and knocked gently. And the two of us gotta fly. Don't think you or your boys will find me or mine. Why, spare us. Thank you for not killing us.
I didn't say anything like that, Jack. Say it right.
Whatever. Madame Laveau, I thought that you wouldn't mind having a monster like this banished. Well, honey, power from anywhere, but above, comes with contracts and strings. And chains, I guess you'd call them. I may not be a slave no more, but I am a slave. My masters give me great power, but they don't like the idea of a knight slaying a dragon, if I could put my hand to it. Really, I should have killed you both. It probably would have gotten me mighty favors, but you can't put your neck out unless the bounty's in the signed contract. You're a businessman. You don't pay money without a contract. Same thing. Think about this. I scried the wild hunt from my little crystal ball I keep in my parlor. That was a night to remember. Baron and I were on the edge of our seats, but Mordred, that was a man from those lost centuries the elites don't want you to know about. Mordred has met real miracle-working saints who did more than any of you Catholic boys have statues of. He knows men who have talked to God like he was their friend. He may not have contracts or chains, but he's got not 1 ounce of repentance in his heart.
You mean he doesn't regret his actions? Does Morgana protect him?
I ain't gonna talk about that fine and wonderful lady. Shush. Listen, whatever I do and whatever Baron here does, I ain't free like Mordred. That fella is strong enough to make his freedom mean something. Me? I've already paid the deep prices. I've seen the well and the hellmouth, and it makes me mighty among my kind. It's freedom enough. Best be happy I could spare you. And try to send Jack back to his stomping grounds. All that makes him is strongest there.
I don't think I could tell Jack what to do after this.
Well, at least keep him from burning the city down. The statue has already moved to a nice new home, and I had a familiar spirit mix up the sand so he can't track us if he tried. I've said my piece and been polite. My old bones are aching. Baron, take us home. She left. The warehouse is abandoned. The speakeasy is still there. We did find some documents and an old picture off her desk. A Madame Laveau ran a cat house down there during Prohibition. You might imagine who we found on the picture. Sean took the picture and we planned to track down the men and women surrounding her. Voodoo needs to be burnt out. We took everything we could of John Lemartin's files. His apartment hadn't been touched either, thanks to the ban on evictions. I didn't expect to be helped out by the law. Nothing there, though. We paid up from the Paranormal Pinkerton coffers, just in case. And besides, always good to have a safe house. John has about 20 and 30 years on and off of Paranormal Pinkerton service. The files were going to take a while. I need to find the ones where he worked with my mother. And Sean, thanks for coming with me. I appreciated your company. Jack Morrow, out.
Pinkerton's Ghosts is a podcast distributed by Superversive Radio, licensed under an attribution non-commercial, share-alike international license. This episode was written by Ben Wheeler and is performed by Ben Wheeler and Anthony Marchetta. Ben Wheeler edits, directs, produces, and herds cats. Kid Dickerson performs our audio editing. Visit us on Facebook, read articles on superversivesf.com, or listen to us on unauthorized Acast, iTunes, or Spotify. Contact us through Twitter at @PinkertonsGhost, email us at pinkertonsghosts@gmail.com, or send us noble messenger possums with messages strapped to their backs. Don't worry, they know how to find us. Thank you for listening, and good luck.